Hello, my name is Kathleen Larson, and I will be doing my presentation on the cloud of adolescence, understanding the link between development and adolescent behavior. In this presentation, I'm going to be covering adolescent delinquency being no new concept, the biological connection in adolescent behavior and the power of influence, traditional and new models, helping adolescents find meaning and purpose, and a biblical perspective. As an adult, it's easy to forget the challenges we face as an adolescence. Why couldn't we see past the moment to a better future? And because of that, never considered the future ramifications of the risks that we would inevitably take. If Shakespeare had it his way, we would be in a sound sleep between the ages of 10 and 3, but that is not the case. We must instead work through it, find reason, and aim to assist our youth in finding meaning and purpose through the cloud of adolescence. It is critically important to understand this, what adolescents go through in this stage. And identity development and formation are taking place, increased peer influence and biological changes, and exposure to new environments and behavior. In his 2012 article, Adolescent Behavior, Multiple Levels of Social Influence, Temple identified that adolescence is a critically important time period characterized by identity, development and formation, increased autonomy and peer influence, biological changes, and exposure to new environments and behavior. The biological changes start occurring long before the age of 10, according to Blakemore in her TED Talk in 2012. She said that the brain starts going through dramatic changes around the age of 4. Galvin described this biological change as a hijacking of the regulatory system by the affective system. In her article, Insights About Adolescent Behavior, Plasticity and Policy from Neural Research, she went further to explain that during adolescence, affective neurosystems, including the sternum and amygdala, undergo the fluctuating course of development. These systems are most excitable and responsive to the environment during adolescence, rendering adolescents more reward-seeking, risk-sensitive, and emotionally reactive than younger or older individuals. Adolescents exhibit enhanced activation of the ventral striatum in response to rewards, an effect that is linked to risky behavior. During adolescence, the prefrontal cortex undergoes dramatic change, affecting their decision-making ability, according to Blakemore in her TED Talk. These dramatic brain development changes are vital to our understanding of adolescent behavior and why it appears adolescence and their decisions are so impulsive. Sarah Jane Blakemore explains the neurological changes that take place between age 4 and 22. With every change encountered throughout the stage of adolescence, Temple, in his 2012 article, asserts that the primary benefit to success of adolescent development is the importance and influence of parents and other adults in reducing adolescent risk behavior and promoting positive youth development. The power of influence, the primary benefit obviously covered is the parental influence. They explain that it reduces risk behavior and promotes positive youth development, as repeated. In a 2004 study conducted by the Society for Research in Child Development, the researchers set out to revisit the earlier findings established by Staton and Kerr in 2000. The purpose of the study was aimed to distinguish the influence of parental warmth in monitoring, control, and knowledge and its effects on adolescent delinquents. Their parental warmth was measured by the acceptance and involvement scale. The investigators were able to access the adolescent's perception of the parent's love, involvement, and responsiveness. And in that, their findings were that parental involvement and responsiveness made adolescents less likely to engage in substance abuse and showed lower levels of delinquent behavior. While those parents that put too much control on their children had a higher rise of substance abuse. As a prominent adult having the ability to influence today's youth, we must value and take our role seriously. We must have a basic understanding of the factors that are at play in the adolescent stage of life, so we will be able to foster and encourage their development in a positive direction versus forming a roadblock during such dramatic developmental stage. Erickson's prominent model of development proposed that in adolescence, individuals are trying to establish their identities and self-concepts. Identity is thought to be the critical component of personal meaning systems, along with the development of significant goals and purposes. It is during this stage that people begin to dedicate themselves to abstract beliefs and purposes. Damon et al. Concluded from their review of the literature that meaning and purpose are central to adolescents' lives. Thus, there should be a rich reciprocal relationship between the development of identity and the development of purpose throughout adolescence. Ideally, this process is nurtured, and adolescents emerge from this stage with a strong sense of identity and a sense of purpose towards their future, as noted in 2008 by Cosine, Steger, and Duncan. Traditional and new models that are being used to assess adolescent behavior are the traditional models are health and belief models, theory of reasoned action, theory of planned belief problem solving, theories including some with less evidence. And these concepts figure in such models include perceived risk and benefits, social norms, self-efficiency, perceived control, and behavioral intention, according to Reyna and Farley in 2006. The new models, prototype and willingness model and fuzzy trace theory, include risk-taking being determined by mental representations of risk takers or risky situations, along with other factors such as a willingness and situation-dependent retrieval of risk-avoidant values, again, according to Reyna and Farley in 2006. I believe God's design in adolescence as a parent was very well covered by the Focus in the Family article, which covers 6 ways to build your teen's identity, and that is covered by Stewart in 2008. The 6 steps include encourage self-discovery. Paul tells us that we must examine and test ourselves in 2 Corinthians 13:5. As a parent or prominent adult figure, we need to be able to step back enough to allow this process while being engaged and in their corner for guidance at any moment. Step 2 is acknowledge their natural abilities. When God places us into an adolescent's life, we take on an important role to look and to watch. When we see natural abilities that adolescent may not recognize in the midst of such things, it's our responsibility to show them. According to Romans 12:6-8, everybody has these. Everybody has a natural ability and a gift. Step 3 is to value their uniqueness. As a parent, or a prominent adult figure, We need to value that they are not just another replica on the street. Value and respect that God created them with a purpose that only they can fulfill, according to Jeremiah 1:4-5. Step 4 is to highlight their spiritual gifts. We each have a purpose and a place in the body of believers, and our set-aside spiritual gift is meant to contribute to God's overall plan. A spiritual gift is given to each of us so we can help each other, according to which is written by Paul in 1 Corinthians 12:7, the New Living Translation version. And then the last step is to reinforce spiritual identity. There are multiple verses that cover that, and that would be John 1:12, Ephesians 1:5, Romans 15:7, Colossians 2:9-10, and 1 Corinthians 6:17. This list can go on explaining that we are predestined to have a living relationship with God, to be rescued from the sin of the world and adopted into his kingdom as his own child. Concluding my presentation, we need to remember that God is all-knowing, which means he knew we would struggle through the adolescent phase, that we would need someone to guide and support us through it. As an adult, he has equipped us with everything that is needed to be that guide and support as a believer, to guide our adolescents through the cloud of adolescence. So instead of slipping them another melatonin, as Shakespeare recommended in his play A Winter's Tale, maybe we should lend them a hand, an ear, and guidance when needed. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.